The avoidant has always been in control. They set the pace, they determine the distance, they decide when to engage and when to withdraw. You've been the one pursuing, accommodating, waiting for their availability, organizing your emotional world around their patterns. But what if you flipped the entire dynamic? What if you went on a rampage of self-focus, boundary setting, and authentic living that completely disrupts the avoidant's sense of control and security? This isn't about playing games or manipulating them into chasing you. This is about embodying behaviors so aligned with your own worth and well-being that the avoidant suddenly realizes they're about to lose access to something valuable. When you execute this rampage correctly, when you genuinely shift your energy from pursuing them to living your fullest life, the avoidant's entire nervous system responds differently. The distance they maintained becomes uncomfortable. The control they had disappears. The certainty that you'd always be available vanishes. And for the first time, they experience the anxiety of potentially losing you, which activates the very pursuit they've been avoiding throughout the relationship. This rampage works because it addresses the core dynamics that keep avoidance distant. When you stop being the pursuer and become someone living their best life with or without the avoidant, you become infinitely more attractive and valuable in their eyes. Here's exactly what this rampage looks like and why it makes avoidance chase you like never before. Stop all forms of pursuing immediately. The first and most critical element of the rampage is to stop all pursuit cold. No more texts checking in on them, no more calls to see how they're doing, no more initiating conversations or making plans, no more reaching out first ever. If the avoidant has been the one withdrawing and you've been the one closing the distance, that pattern ends now completely and without explanation. You stop pursuing not as a strategy to make them chase you, but because you're redirecting all that energy back into yourself and your own life where it actually belongs. The immediate cessation of pursuit creates a vacuum that the avoidant notices instantly. They're used to your consistent presence, your availability, your attempts to maintain connection. When that suddenly stops, when you're no longer in their inbox or initiating contact, when you've gone completely silent, it registers as a significant change in the dynamic. Subscribe for insights into attachment psychology that reveal why these counterintuitive approaches work when conventional wisdom fails with avoidant patterns. The avoidant's nervous system, which was comfortable with you pursuing, suddenly has to recalibrate. The safety they felt in your consistent pursuit disappears and they're left wondering what changed and why you're not reaching out anymore. The cessation also forces the avoidant to do something they've never had to do with you before. Take initiative. If they want contact, they have to be the one to create it. If they want to know how you're doing, they have to ask. If they want your presence, they have to pursue it. This role reversal is deeply uncomfortable for the avoidant, but it's also the only way they'll ever step into being an active participant rather than a passive recipient of your efforts. When you stop pursuing, you create the space for them to finally chase, and many avoidants will step into that space because they don't want to lose you entirely. Build an obviously fulfilling life without them. The second element of the rampage is to visibly build a life so full and satisfying that it's obvious you don't need the avoidant to be happy. This means actually investing in yourself, your friendships, your hobbies, your career, your personal growth. You're not faking fulfillment to make them jealous. You're creating real fulfillment that makes you genuinely less available and less interested in someone who can't show up consistently. You're going out more, doing things that excite you, spending time with people who appreciate you, pursuing goals that matter to you. The obvious fulfillment is crucial because avoidants need to see that you're not sitting around waiting for them or pining for their attention. When they see through social media or mutual friends that you're thriving, that you're happy, that you're living fully, it triggers something in them. They realize you're not as affected by their absence as they assumed you'd be. They recognize you have options and a full life that doesn't center them. This recognition makes them question their importance to you and whether they're about to lose their position in your life to your new fulfilling existence. The life building also makes you more attractive. People are drawn to those who are living fully and joyfully. When the avoidant sees you genuinely happy without them, when they witness you thriving rather than just surviving, when they observe you being the best version of yourself, you become more desirable. The avoidant starts to wonder if they made a mistake by keeping you at distance. They begin to fear that someone else will see your value and claim the access to you they've been taking for granted. This fear of loss is what activates their chase because they don't want to miss out on someone who's clearly becoming more amazing without their presence weighing you down. Respond with boundaries, not accommodation. When the avoidant does reach out, which they likely will once they notice you've stopped pursuing, the third element of the rampage is responding with clear boundaries rather than your previous accommodation. You don't drop everything to engage with them. You don't immediately make yourself available. You don't reward their minimal effort with maximum enthusiasm. Instead, you respond on your terms, in your timing, with clear expectations about what kind of interaction you're willing to have, based on what you need, rather than what they're offering. The boundaried response might look like not responding to their text for hours or even a day because you're busy with your actual life. When you do respond, you're pleasant but brief. You don't carry the conversation or do the emotional labor of keeping it going. If they suggest getting together at their convenience, you have plans and you're not changing them. You offer an alternative time that works for you, and if they can't accommodate your schedule, you're fine with not seeing them. This boundary setting communicates that access to you is no longer guaranteed just because they've decided they want it. The boundaries make the avoidant work for your attention in ways they've never had to before. They're used to you being flexible, accommodating, always willing to adjust to their needs and availability. When you stop doing that, when you require them to meet you on your terms, when you make it clear that your time and energy have value that needs to be earned, it shifts the power dynamic completely. The avoidant realizes they can't just have you whenever they want. They have to actually pursue you, show up consistently, meet your standards. This requirement often activates their chase because they don't want to lose access to you by failing to meet your very reasonable expectations for how you deserve to be treated. Show genuine disinterest in their patterns. The fourth element of the rampage is to stop being invested in their patterns, their process, or their excuses. You're no longer asking why they withdrew. You're not trying to understand their avoidance. You're not making space for their emotional unavailability. You're simply disengaged from the drama of their attachment patterns because you've recognized those patterns are their work to do, not yours to accommodate. When they're distant, you don't notice or care because you're focused on your own life. When they're inconsistent, you don't track it because you're not organizing your emotional state around their availability. The genuine disinterest in their patterns removes something the avoidant has relied on: your attention to their process. Avoidants often maintain control by having partners who are hyper-aware of their patterns, tracking their moods, accommodating their needs, walking on eggshells to avoid triggering withdrawal. When you stop doing all of that, when you're genuinely unbothered by their patterns because you're no longer waiting around for them to change or show up differently, it disrupts their sense of importance. They realize their patterns aren't having their usual effect. Their withdrawal doesn't make you chase. Their distance doesn't make you anxious. Their inconsistency doesn't make you try harder. The disinterest forces the avoidant to confront that their usual strategies for maintaining control aren't working anymore. They can't keep you hooked through push-pull dynamics because you're not reacting to either the pushing or the pulling. You're just living your life, and they're increasingly irrelevant to it unless they can show up consistently as someone capable of real relationship. This realization often triggers them to chase because they don't want to become irrelevant to someone they actually care about. They start pursuing to regain the position of importance they've lost through their own patterns, meeting someone who no longer tolerates those patterns without consequence. Make it clear you have other options. The fifth element of the rampage is to subtly make it clear that you have other options and you're open to exploring them. This doesn't mean you're dating multiple people or rubbing new connections in the avoidant's face. It means you're not acting like the avoidant is your only possibility for connection. You're going out and meeting people. You're staying open to new connections. You're not sitting at home waiting for the avoidant to be ready for you. You're living as a single person who's available to anyone who can actually show up for you consistently. The awareness of your options triggers the avoidant's competitive instinct and fear of loss. When they realize you're not waiting exclusively for them, when they understand that someone else might claim the access to you they've been taking for granted, when they recognize they're not your only focus, it activates anxiety about being replaced. The avoidant starts to wonder if you're interested in someone else, if someone else is treating you better than they did, if they're about to lose you to a person who can actually meet your needs. This competitive anxiety often drives them to chase because they want to secure their position before someone else does. The options awareness also communicates self-respect. You're not so desperate for the avoidant's attention that you're willing to wait indefinitely while they decide if they want you. You know your worth, and you're willing to explore connections with people who can recognize and match that worth. This self-respect is incredibly attractive to avoidants who are used to people with low self-worth who tolerate poor treatment. When they encounter someone who clearly values themselves enough to have standards and options, they recognize they're dealing with someone different. Someone they might actually lose if they don't step up. This recognition often prompts the chase because the avoidant doesn't want to lose someone rare enough to know their own value. Never explain the shift in your behavior. The sixth crucial element of the rampage is to never explain why you've changed your behavior, why you've stopped pursuing, why you're suddenly less available. The shift should be obvious through your actions, but never articulated through explanations. When the avoidant asks what's changed or why you're different, you remain vague. You don't tell them you're trying a new strategy or that you're hurt or that you've decided to focus on yourself. You just are focused on yourself, and that focus speaks for itself without needing verbal explanation or justification. The lack of explanation keeps the avoidant off balance and uncertain. They don't know if you've lost interest, if you're seeing someone else, if you've just gotten busy, or if you've decided you're done waiting for them. This uncertainty creates anxiety for the avoidant who's used to understanding the dynamics and having control. When they can't figure out what's happening, when they can't categorize your behavior into their usual patterns, when they're left guessing about your motivations, they become preoccupied with understanding you. This preoccupation often leads to increased pursuit as they reach out more to try to figure out what's going on with you. The unexplained shift also prevents the avoidant from framing your change in ways that let them off the hook. If you explain that you're hurt by their patterns, they can make it about you being too sensitive. If you explain that you need more, they can say you're too demanding. But if you don't explain anything and just embody the shift, they can't dismiss it. They have to sit with the reality that something fundamental has changed and they don't know why or how to fix it. This powerlessness often drives them to chase because pursuing you becomes their only way to try to restore the dynamic where they had control and certainty about your availability. Demonstrate you'll walk away if needs aren't met. The seventh and most powerful element of the rampage is to make it genuinely clear that you will walk away completely if your needs continue to not be met. This isn't a threat or an ultimatum. This is a calm, grounded reality that you communicate through your energy and occasional statements when appropriate. You're done accepting less than you deserve. You're done waiting for someone to be ready for you. You're done organizing your life around someone else's availability. If the avoidant can't meet your reasonable needs for consistency, emotional availability, and commitment, you're prepared to move on without resentment or drama. The willingness to walk away is the foundation that makes the entire rampage effective. If the avoidant senses you'll stay regardless of their behavior, nothing else matters. But when they genuinely feel that you're 1 foot out the door, that you're seriously evaluating whether this connection adds value to your life, that you're prepared to choose yourself over waiting for them, it creates the kind of loss anxiety that motivates real change. The avoidant realizes they're not just at risk of you being upset or distant, they're at risk of you being gone permanently. And that prospect is terrifying enough to make them chase in ways they've never chased before. The genuine willingness also gives you the power to actually leave if the chase doesn't result in real change. Some avoidants will respond to this rampage by stepping up, doing the work, showing up consistently because they don't want to lose you. Those are the ones worth investing in. But some avoidants will try to breadcrumb you back, offer temporary changes that revert to old patterns, or continue their usual behavior despite your shift. The beauty of the rampage is that it prepares you to actually walk away from avoidance who can't or won't meet your needs, which protects you from wasting more time on someone incapable of real relationship regardless of how much they might chase when feeling threatened by loss. Why this rampage works on avoidant psychology. This rampage works because it addresses the core dynamics that create and maintain avoidant patterns in relationship. Avoidants maintain distance when they feel pursued because pursuit triggers engulfment fears. But when you stop pursuing, the engulfment fear disappears and is replaced by abandonment anxiety, which they're less defended against. Avoidants take partners for granted when those partners are always available. But when you become genuinely unavailable through having a full life, you become valuable and desirable in ways that activate their attachment system rather than their avoidance system. The rampage also works because it forces the avoidant to experience what they've been putting you through. The anxiety of not knowing where someone stands. The pain of inconsistent contact, the fear of being replaced, the discomfort of wanting someone who's not making themselves available. When avoidants experience these feelings themselves, when they're on the receiving end of the uncertainty and distance they've been creating, many of them finally understand what they've been doing and become motivated to show up differently because they hate how it feels. Most importantly, the rampage works because it's not really about making the avoidant chase you. It's about you genuinely reclaiming your power, rebuilding your life, and refusing to participate in dynamics that harm you. When you do this authentically, When you truly shift from needing the avoidant to simply wanting someone who can meet your needs, you become the kind of person who naturally attracts healthy pursuit. If the avoidant can rise to meet you, great. If they can't, you're already building a life without them that's fulfilling enough that their inability to chase or change doesn't devastate you. The Rampage creates a win-win, where either you get a transformed relationship with an avoidant who's finally showing up, or you get yourself back and become available for someone who can actually meet your needs without requiring a rampage to motivate them to try.